is up, Outlap F1 Nation? This will be Season 6, Episode 36 of the Outlap F1 podcast. It's our 2024 Singapore Grand Prix preview show. You've got Andy and I'm along with Cody tonight, and we've turned it around and re-racked, and we're back again. So Cody, how does life find you on this beautiful, still warm in Chicago Wednesday evening?
Pretty good. I'm going to enjoy the warmth for as long as it lasts because Chicago winters are abysmal, and I'm not a fan. I will be escaping the United States entirely in the dead of winter. That's how much I hate the winter. So it's going to be cold. Also, excited that we've got another Formula One race so close. It's going to be really weird schedule for the rest of the year because after this one we got 4 weeks off and then a triple header and then 3 weeks off and then another triple header and then it's done.
Yeah, the race I kept forgetting about was Qatar. Which normally would have been in the middle of that, is now moved because, god dang it, we don't want drivers dying on the racetrack from heat exhaustion because that's a little warm even in October. But we're going to roll with the punches on the schedule, but we've got hopefully what is going to be a very fun, epic race. I was watching part of the new F1 streaming channel that's on like Samsung TV Plus, and it's on like Tubi and those. They're running all of the old like Singapore good races. So I watched part of like 2017, and then I saw part of I think right now they're running the 2010 one. So it's getting me in the mood. Let's put it that way. It was good while I was prepping. I was getting in the mood for Singapore. So welcome on in. If you have found our show, welcome along. You can find us, as always, Twitter, Instagram, Discord, Reddit, and, of course, YouTube at Outlap F1 Podcast is the handle for all of that. If you enjoy what you are seeing and you like what you're hearing, if you're on YouTube, you can do as the kids do and smash the subscribe button. I've heard they're coming out with something called Hype. So eventually I'm going to ask you to start hyping us, but not right now. That's just what YouTube is coming out with, apparently. I saw an article today about it. But you can leave us a like, or if you're on your favorite podcasting app, you can leave us a 5-star review. Why does every content person tell you to do all that stuff? Well, it's really simple. It just helps us come up a little bit better in search results, helps us get our stuff to you, if you really do enjoy it, a little bit quicker. So that's all it does. It just helps us out a little bit with the algorithm there. You can email the show as always, chatnow@outlapf1.com. We'll take you to there. Thank you so much to the people who do continue to support us monetarily, including Dean Warwick, Yuri Dolchester, Paul Weaver, Quentin Warden, Kevin Kelly, Regan Stanzik, Timothy Brown, and of course, Jonathan Scott. If you'd like to help us out a little bit with some extra funding to upgrade some new equipment or upgrade the equipment we already have, or purchase some new equipment so we can do fun things like remotes when we're traveling and all that other fun stuff, $1, $5 all goes into a big pot that we can kind of divvy up and do that kind of spend for. So it's a link in our show notes. It's our anchor page. We would be most appreciative if you'd like to do that, but that is completely, totally optional. Last thing before we hop into the preview proper, the good folks at Manscaped have a code that you can use at checkout and get 20%, and that gets you 20% off and free shipping with our code OUTLAP. That's OUTLAP, all one word. And as always, we're proud to bring that offer to you. Okay, before we hop into track facts and the predictions and all the meat of this, a little bit of news. Surprising that I found as much news as I did. I didn't expect when I sat down to put this together that there was going to be as much here. But apparently, Red Bull is going under a bit of a restructuring, and teams usually do that. Sometimes when they're struggling, sometimes when, teams just do it. But it looks like with the departure of Jonathan Wheatley, it feels like what Red Bull is doing is they're not going to replace him necessarily, but they're going to recreate him in like 3 different positions. And so Max Verstappen's race engineer, Liam Lambiase, is going to get promoted, and he will be the, quote, head of racing. Stephen Knowles is taking on a newly created role of head of sporting regulations. Richard Wolverson is taking on a new position as what they call head of racing operations. And Gerard O'Reilly is to take full control of team logistics, which will help drive some more efficiencies that are critical for success in the cost cap era. And according to Christian Horner, his quote on all of the changes are, quote, "We are in the midst of a period of significant change and development at Oracle Red Bull Racing, and in light of the challenges to come, we have made the decision to alter the structure of the race team." All right, Cody, you are the Red Bull source. What is your thought on all of the moving of the pieces here?
I'm not surprised it's happening. Red Bull has lost some very big personnel lately, with Jonathan Wheatley leaving the team, and they're going to need to, if not fill his role directly, they're going to have to go through this kind of restructuring. We saw this happen with McLaren, and it ended up working out okay. I feel like any type of large-scale restructuring at higher parts of an organization can be a little scary, because you've got new people at the top making big important decisions, and you're not really sure how they're going to handle it. Might run into some growing pains, and it's a little bit of a scary time maybe for Red Bull to be going through all this, because we're seeing that their iron grip on the championship is not as tight anymore. They're just trying to hold on to the drivers' championship at this point, and it looks like, unless something big changes, the constructors' championship is already lost. So to have this happening at this time is a little scary, that it might be unstable, but I'm hoping for their sake that all these people are very well qualified. They're long members of the team, I think, in most of these cases, and that they're going to be successful in filling these roles.
Yeah, I mean, we will see. I mean, I've seen it work. I've seen McLaren go through lots of iterations of restructuring in the 10-year journey that it's been since they were last up at the top of the constructor standings. So, I mean, it can. What you hope is that you're not seeing this every year. Like, you hope that we're going to make the changes. We're going to put these people in, that these are the right people for these roles. I mean, a lot of it feels like there's just a horizontal shift. So I don't know that it's like big promotions, but it does, I think, put some people in charge of some others, which is probably important and something that you probably need to have defined when when you have big personalities, i.e. Adrian Newey, i.e. Jonathan Wheatley, leaving the organization. You don't want to have that power vacuum. So it's probably a good idea to do this now. You can start all the transition while those people are still here. And then, it sounds like this is really going to be for 2025. It's not going to be like in effect tomorrow. I think they just told everybody about it now. So you've still got a few months of transition with those people still in their contracts before the season ends and before their gardening leave starts. So, if you're going to do it, this is the time.
Now, is GP still going to be Max's race engineer when he takes this promotion?
Yes, he will still be talking to Verstappen on the radio. So you are still going to hear the Max GP relationship come out in full swing on your Sunday afternoons. They're not going to take that away. They're not taking that away at all. All right, our next story. And this is something we actually didn't get a chance to talk about over the course of the Monza weekend. And I actually kind of found out about it late in the game, but it's kind of nice when you have not huge breaking news to kind of get into a story like this. Alpine, the Alpine staff that work on the Renault engines in a town called Varennes. I think I'm saying that right. If I am butchering that, my apologies to everybody in that town who lives in France.
French speakers are not.
It is not my native language, so I apologize if I've completely butchered that. But those factory workers who effectively would be out of a job if Renault chooses to shut down its F1 engine program, and from all of the rumors that we've heard, that seems to be what they're setting it up to do, which is to shut down and sign a supply deal with Mercedes for the Alpine team for the next few years. they want to obviously keep their jobs, and they staged a few protests outside of Monza and were marching through the streets of Monza apparently over the course of that weekend, and it has gotten some attention of the Alpine / Renault higher ups. So Luca De Meo is going to meet with them in the next couple of weeks to try to give them some clarity, because nobody really has any clarity on what Renault is going to do, what the idea is, what the vision is at this point. It seems it's all gotten very, very muddled. So, yeah, I mean, we will continue to follow this. If anything breaks that will obviously affect the F1 team, we will bring it to you. But it was a kind of an interesting thing. I did not realize that it had escalated to the level of like actual marching protests.
Yeah, it didn't receive a whole bunch of publicity like directly during Monza weekend. I think we kind of heard more about it after the fact that they were there protesting, and I guess I'm on their side. You know, if I was in their position, I would be proud of my work, and I wouldn't want it to all go to waste, and I wouldn't want to lose my job. So I think good on them for protesting that they want to stay in this. I also think no one does a protest quite as well as the French, so I think it's really good on their part to do this. I really hope that something good comes out of it, because I guess if the Renault chief is agreeing to meet with them following these protests, and that means that they, at the very least got their attention. I don't really know how big a difference it will make in the end to the people at the top who are making these kind of decisions based pretty much purely on money, it would seem. But I hope for their sake that Alpine does stick with their engine program, and that all these people get to keep their jobs.
Yeah, apparently the meeting is scheduled it's soon. It's Friday, September 20th, in order to, quote, bring his attention, and talking about Luca De Meo, in the incomprehension surrounding the end of F1 engine development in France at the Vry, I'm going to butcher this one too, Chalion site? And again, if that is I'm sure I am butchering the name of these towns. You can pretty much book that. A unique technology in France, a statement said on Tuesday. The staff representative thanks Mr. De Meo for responding favorably to this request. So they're at least going to sit down and talk about it. And I am seeing, shirts here with the hashtag Vry on track. So I'm with the workers here as well. It would be really unfortunate to see a marque like Renault, who has been in F1 for the longest amount of time, they are a historical brand, to just pack up and not be there anymore. Especially given the favorable nature of the 2026 rules. But I think that is going to be the linchpin of, do they want to invest? Because you have to invest. And if they don't have the money to invest, it's going to be hard. So we will continue to follow this. And like I said, if anything that affects the F1 organization, we will obviously bring that to you. All right, our next story, the 2026 tires. Pirelli has their first iteration, and they actually ran on a mule car. And it was an Aston Martin modified mule car, I believe, at the Circuit de Barcelona, Catalunya today, or earlier this week. Aston Martin actually won a lottery, because apparently all the big teams put their hands up and says, yeah, we'll make a mule car. We'll get a fresh read on the 2026 regulations. So Felipe Drugovich, remember him? I guess he was the one that actually conducted the test. And it sounds like Pirelli, now we're 18 months out of that. They look like they're trying to get a real head start on these 2026 tires, try to make them handle all of the loads. So no real results that I've seen in the articles that I've read about this, but interesting that the testing's already taken place. So these 2026 rules, they are coming.
Mm-hmm. I did see some images of the mule car going around with the new tires, and it's strange how easy it is to tell a difference with differences that are so small, because the tires are not that much narrower. So I don't remember the exact changes in dimensions, but the front wheels are something like 2.5 centimeters narrower, and the back tires are something like 3 centimeters narrower, something like that. But between that and the fact that they're test tires, so they don't have any of like the Pirelli branding or the color striping to denote tire compound on the sides, they look very strange being on the car. I'm not really surprised either that they put this up to a lottery to select the team that was going to, have their mule car do this, because we've seen complaints, I think, in the past from different teams who have ended up being involved in these tests, complaints that they're getting some amount of data before the rest of the teams. So I guess a lottery system is probably the best way to do it, because you're going to need somebody's car to test out the tires.
Yep.
And I have to wonder just how much goes into setting up a mule car for this type of tire testing, because the new cars that are going to be running these tires are obviously going to be, a little lighter and have different dimensions and different properties for downforce and such with those new cars. So I wonder if they do anything with these mule cars to try to set them up to kind of simulate the conditions that these tires are actually going to be on those type of cars, or if they just run them as the car exists now because they've got something to correlate against. I'd really like to know exactly how they test.
It depends. It depends, I think, on the mule car and what Pirelli want to do. And I think what they usually do is they say, we want to simulate X, and then the teams come back and either take parts off or put parts on or do something to try to make sure that that's an accurate simulation. Now, that is an inexact science, because we're dealing with cars that are still in the drawing board stage. So we do not know how that's actually going to go, but at least I'm happy that Pirelli is being active and trying to be in front of this, and they're not waiting until like this time next year to do this first test, when it would be like, well, what can you really do if your formula sucks? And then they come back and say, not much. So, it's good that they're doing this type of thing now. This is what they should do. Pirelli gets to keep, being the only tire supplier for F1 teams. And with this big of a rule change, you got to make sure that the tires are going to be there to do what they're being expected to do. So, yeah, I don't know much about in terms of what teams do to the mule cars. I just know that it is not just a 2-year-old car with new tires on it. There are certain things that I know they have to do based on what Pirelli is asking them to do. And then in terms of the data share, that's supposed to all come from Pirelli at the same time. They're supposed to compile a report that says, this is what we saw, and you can ask questions, and you should be able to ask Aston Martin any questions. Drugovich can be asked questions. All of that. It's supposed to be as transparent as possible. Can you ensure that that's 100% transparency? No. Whenever can you do that? But, that's why they did the lottery. So, and it's just kind of interesting that Aston Martin won it, especially given who they have just signed and where they're targeting their efforts now. So It feels like everything coming up Stroll right now. But anyway, we will kind of leave that there. We'll see if there are any future developments or any feedback that we hear on this issue, because it's going to be a big issue. We'll obviously bring it to you. Okay, so let's focus in a little bit on the weekend before we get into the track facts and stuff. There's 2 stories about this weekend in particular. One that does affect the track. There is now a 4th DRS zone for the revised layout at the Singapore Grand Prix. I did add a new image into our little document here. It is between turns 14 and turn 16. So obviously this is part of if you all remember last year, I think the lap times were like 9 seconds faster between qualifying last year and 2022 because they took out all of those extra chicanes and all that stuff. So basically out of turn 14, which is a pretty hard, almost not quite 90-degree turn, but it's a pretty acute angle turn. There's a short run down to turn 15, which is really more of a kink that it looks like the drivers were taking flat out anyway. And then there's a whole DRS zone that starts right after turn 14. It goes all the way to the corner, which is a hard right going into turn 16. So they're obviously trying to make this track a little bit easier to overtake. We've had our DRS debates left, right, and center about whether that's a good or a bad thing, but it looks like they're trying to make this circuit a little more race friendly as opposed to just some awesome qualifying. But Cody, what's your thought on it?
I think it's a good thing that they're adding in another DRS zone. We saw during the race last year that it could be very hard to overtake. During this Grand Prix, we saw signs holding up everybody at the end in pretty much a little mini train for the last bunch of laps, and no one could get around him. I guess they were all kind of running out of tires at that point anyway. But I think an extra DRS zone would be good to help counter any dirty air and hopefully give a little bit more overtake opportunities. It also helps to make sense. You put in your, we'll get to this in a minute, but you put in your qualifying time before I did, and I saw that you were way faster than last year, and I was going, man, wow, why? He's thinking they're going to go a second and a half faster than last year. What gives? And then see that, oh, it's the extra DRS zone, and I was thinking, okay, that could definitely play a part.
Okay, I had this up at the top so you could see it.
Yeah,
and then we do our predictions at the bottom.
yeah.
So it was in prima facie evidence there. So and you can, and until we read them, you can still change your qualifying time. You are not locked in yet.
Don't worry.
Okay, all right. Okay, good. We try to be fair here. Granted, I need all the help I can freaking get, but still, we try to be fair here. Mm-hmm. Okay, last story before we hop into the actual track facts and all that news stuff that we just kind of talked about. This is the weekend apparently of some special liveries, some special helmet designs. I saw Lando Norris has a pretty cool looking purple blue paint thing on his helmet, so he's not going to be in the neon green like we're used to seeing in terms of helmet. Mercedes are running, and we're going to have a hard time differentiating Mercedes from an Aston Martin this weekend, other than the fact that I think the Mercedes will be a little bit farther up in the grid because they're running a turquoise livery. And when I looked at it, I said, God, that looks a lot like an Aston Martin, but I love the color, so I'm for it. It's just going to be really interesting to see how it looks under the lights. The VCARB team has come out with what they call a denim livery, which looks pretty cool. And unfortunately, one team that was going to debut something that is no longer doing it is Red Bull. And they're usually all about the special liveries. They've had the fan design livery, I think, at Austin last year. And a lot of times we get there and we're like, oh, it's a Red Bull livery with an extra picture. Well, they don't even want to do the extra picture. So apparently their reasoning is it would add extra weight to the car, and we got enough problems right now, so we're just not even going to bother. But Cody, what's your thought on all of this? First of all, have you seen the other two liveries, and then what's your thought on Red Bull?
I have seen the other two liveries, and I am glad I'm not the only one who thought at a glance that the Mercedes one kind of looked like the Aston Martin. That was my gut reaction, was like, that they look very similar. And I'm thinking, once we actually see them on track, that the Petronas kind of tealy color, turquoisey color will look probably a little more blue than the Aston Martin, so it won't look like totally similar. But I do think it looks good. I think the VCARB one looks all right. I honestly think it would have looked better if they had gone for the denim finish kind of over more of the car, because they've got the denim finish over like the nose and the side pods, but then they still got like the normal blue on the engine cover. So it kind of looks a little bizarre. I think if they had done the denim on the engine cover as well, it probably would have looked a little cooler, in my opinion. And as far as the ditching the Red Bull special livery goes, yeah, it's not really good mark on Red Bull if they're saying we can't do special liveries because we don't want to add any weight to the car. I think that's a little bit of a forecast that they don't think they're going to do really well here in Singapore. I am hoping that after Singapore they will make hopefully some sort of comeback, because they're supposed to be bringing upgrades in many weeks when they come to Austin. But for right now, they sound like they're doing everything they can, down to the few grams of paint that they can save to try to improve their performance.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it just kind of is, and I don't think once the cars hit the track, anyone will greatly miss the fact that Red Bull isn't doing it. It was just kind of interesting that got kind of called out. I mean, I'm looking at the denim one. I actually think that was pretty slick. The V-Carb, the Toro Rosso V-Carb iteration has always done their liveries. I always wish that they could inspire the main team a little bit more, because I like the fact that they take chances and stuff like that. So that's actually pretty cool. And yeah, I'm just looking at the Mercedes one again. It looks like Aston Martin with a slightly brighter shade of green toothpaste. If I'm being honest about it.
I do agree with you that I wish Red Bull special liveries could be a little bit more inspired, because they've had some good ones, but the fact of the matter is the Red Bull special liveries always look like the Red Bull normal livery with a little something extra. I feel like they kind of go the Ferrari route there,
right,
where they never go different enough for it to really make a big stark difference,
or they'll tease a side pod cover and you're like, oh yeah, it's gonna finally be different, and then it's not. Mm-hmm. But anyway, so obviously be on the lookout for that. If you see 4 green cars, that's not an illusion. Two of those are the Mercedes. Okay, so we will actually go ahead and we will drop our green flag, and we will get into the Singapore GP Track Facts, brought to us by the good folks at Pirelli Motorsport. We have lap times we can talk about this time, because this is our second year on this configuration. So Cody, tell us about the Marina Bay Circuit.
All right, this weekend we are racing around the Marina Bay Street Circuit, located in Singapore. I guess the Marina Bay portion of Singapore. Number of laps around this circuit is going to be 62 if we actually get that many. We have had issues getting that many in the past on many an occasion. And the length of the circuit is 4.940 kilometers, that's 3.069 miles, and it consists of 19 turns. The tire selection from Pirelli for this race is going to be the C3 for hard, C4 for medium, and C5 for the soft compound. And the Pirelli track characteristics are a 4 traction, 3 for asphalt grip, 3 for asphalt abrasion, a 5 out of 5 for track evolution, 2 for tire stress, another 5 for braking, a 2 for lateral load, and a 5 out of 5 for downforce. The qualifying lap record for this current configuration of the Singapore circuit was set last year, as it was, I believe, the only time we've raced under this configuration so far. And that was set by Carlos Sainz with a 1 minute 30.984 seconds, while the race lap record on this configuration was set last year by Lewis Hamilton with a bad kitty with a 1 minute 35.867 seconds. Most wins around Singapore is going to go to Sebastian Vettel with a whopping 5 wins here, followed by Lewis Hamilton with 4, and then 2 for Fernando Alonso. While the most constructor wins in Singapore is going to be a 3-way tie with 4 wins apiece, and that's going to go to Red Bull, Mercedes, and Ferrari. And then in second place, McLaren with a lonely 1 victory. What's the circuit like, Andy?
We might get 2 this weekend. That's at least what I'm hoping for. But the Marina Bay Circuit is one of the most physically demanding on the calendar. Its bumpy street surface coupled with humid conditions give the drivers plenty to think about. Even with that revised 2023 layout, reducing the number of corners from 23 to 19, they are working the wheel a lot too around the high-speed lap. The physical stress can cause them to lose as much as 3 kilograms of body weight over the course of a race. That's insane. As for that weather, and that weather looks to be almost a carbon copy of last year. Rain around pretty much every day, but probably not going to affect the nighttime running. So for qualifying day, there's going to be thunderstorms in the morning, then cloudy skies late, a high of 89, so that's very, very toasty. Winds out of the southeast at 5 to 10, a 60% chance of rain, that's in the daytime. For qualifying night, cloudy skies, a low near 80, so not a whole lot of relief there. Winds light and variable, so we're not going to see a whole lot of wind affect the cars. A 24% chance of a scattered shower affecting the circuit. As for race day, again, the daytime, scattered showers and thunderstorms, a high near 90. Winds out of the southeast at 5 to 10. Only a 50% chance of rain. Again, that's in the daytime. As for the race night, variable clouds with a slight chance of a thunderstorm. Might we see another wet Singapore race? The low of 81, winds light and variable, only a 40% chance of rain. All right. So we're going to take a quick break. We will re-rack. And we'll come back, and then we'll get into our predictions. It definitely looks like the weather's going to be what the weather always is in Singapore. A little bit chance of rain, a little bit, then probably burning off by the time we actually get to the nighttime running. But hopefully no lightning, because I don't think we've ever had lightning around there. So we don't want to see that. But anyway, we're going to come back. We'll get into our predictions, and we'll tell you when and where to watch your F1 this weekend. Welcome back in. This is season 6, episode 36 of the Outlap F1 podcast. It's the 2024 Singapore Grand Prix preview show. You've got Andy and I'm along with Cody tonight. And we haven't caged Cody's cat, but we've at least isolated where he is. And we made sure that everything was okay. So if you heard that big bang in there, everything is fine. Nothing precious got broken. It all took a licking and kept on ticking. And that's what you do when you have cats around. You make sure your stuff can do that. So we are going to hop into our predictions for the weekend. And we're going to start, as we are always apt to do, with the pole sitter. And this one is no longer straightforward. This one we're actually going to have to do a little bit of work on now. So Cody, like your prediction here, what do you got?
So for pole position, I've actually got a little short story behind this one. Now, my fiance is not really a Formula One fan. You know, God bless her. She listens to me spew about it all the time. So she's definitely a good sport about it. And this time, I asked her, I'm like, for my predictions, why don't you pick the pole sitter? And she sat there for a minute and she went, Alfonso Hernandez? It gave me a pretty good laugh. She kind of mushed a whole bunch of drivers in one there. So after that, I gave her a list of the drivers from the top 4 teams, and she picked Piastri, which I thought was an excellent pick. That's what I'm going to go with. I'm going to go with Oscar Piastri.
All right. So my driver name in F1 of all the video games is now that's set. It's Alfonso Hernandez.
Fantastic.
Done. So if you see that anywhere out there in the universe, if you happen to and you wonder who the hell came up with that name, that's where it came from. This is inspiration. I love it. So I'm gonna go. I got to get on this train. Of course, I probably got on it way too late. But Charles Leclerc has been throwing down some laps, and he also can sometimes go really well around this track as well. So I'm going to go Charles Leclerc for the pole, just because he's got that, I think, that little bit of extra gear. I obviously want to double down and say Lando, but that didn't work out for me really well last time. So I'm going to get off of that train, and maybe I get proven wrong. Fine. That would also be fine. I'm willing to sacrifice the point, but I'm going to cover myself here and say Charles Leclerc for pole position here. All right, so our qualifying lap time from last year was that 1:30.984 set by Carlos Sainz. And you mentioned this earlier, where I got my lap time from. There is that extra DRS zone. I do think they're all going to take advantage of it. I think we're going to get some really fun lap times around Singapore when we, a couple of years ago, thought that this was impossible. So I'm going to go pretty darn quick, and I'm going to hope we get there. 1:29.586 is my lap time for Singapore. Cody, what you got?
That is a lot faster than last year. Now, I actually already sped up my time a little bit. And even still, I'm only going to go with about 0.6 faster than last year. I'm going with a 1 minute 30.286. And I'm thinking it's going to probably split the difference somewhere between us. I'm just hoping it's a little closer to me.
Yeah, it's going to be one of those we're probably going to have to get the decimal counter out and figure out what the delta is type of thing. But I figure I'll differentiate a little bit. I'll throw a lap time out there. I was shocked last year by how much just getting rid of that chicane did what it did to the lap time. because I think we tried to do it. I think I was looking at our times last year. We were like 5 seconds faster. No, it was like 10 seconds faster. So like you put an extra DRS zone in there with these cars. Let's see what we do, and then let's see how wet is it when they're qualifying. If it's wet, we're both going to suffer on that, but we shall see. That's the fun of this. All right, so now we turn to the race on Sunday. The 2023 podium consisted of Carlos Sainz, Lando Norris, and Lewis Hamilton. So who do we have winning this race? It's a critical race for both championships. Cody, what you got?
I agree with you that Charles Leclerc has been on some very strong form, and he has run here very well in the past. Back in 2019, he pretty much only lost the race because he got overcut by his teammate Vettel. So I think that Charles Leclerc has a really good shot at winning the race here this year. And then I've got Oscar Piastri coming in second and Lando Norris wrapping up the podium.
All right. I have the same three. I just have it in a slightly different order. Here's where I will double down and be the homer that I am. I don't care. He needs to win. And he almost got it last year. So he does go well around this track. He always has in his career. So I'm going to say Lando Norris to come home P1. Charles Leclerc going to be right on their ass again. I can see almost a repeat of the type of thing that happened. And the question is that fourth DRS zone enough? Because I think the Ferraris are going to be there right in the mix. And Oscar Piastri being on good form as well. I think it's going to be Norris, Leclerc, and Piastri, your top three for Singapore this weekend. Okay, so we are going to now do the fastest lap and the driver, and I don't have a decimal point, so I'm going to let you go first, Cody, and I'm going to put in a decimal point.
It's all good. I think that Max Verstappen, unfortunately, is probably going to miss out on the podium, and I think he's probably going to be in a very similar position to what he was in Azerbaijan, where he's going to have a pretty good gap to the car behind him. It's good to put him in a good position to pit for softs near the end of the race and hopefully successfully go for that fastest lap this time. So I got Verstappen taking the fastest lap, and I got him doing it within 1 minute 35.511 seconds.
All right, very good. And I didn't realize I didn't even update my bonus picks, so I've quickly now done that. So I apparently selected P4, P5, and P6, probably because this is what we picked last year, but that's fine. That's all good. So I'll go first here with my quick on-the-fly picks. I'm going to say I think Ferraris will be good. So I got Carlos Sainz in P4. So I got, McLaren, Ferrari, and I think that's kind of where the decanting is going to lead us, at least for here. So I got Carlos Sainz at P4. George Russell, I think he will see the checkered flag this time. I don't think he will crash out on the last lap like last year. And Lewis Hamilton will also be around. Much better, I think, showing from the Mercedes that look like an Aston Martin, but I think because of that, they will go good here.
What'd you have for your fastest lap driver?
Oh, and I skipped that one too. Wow, I'm batting 1,000 tonight. I'm going to go Max Verstappen for that, 135.258. I agreed. You said it so well, I even thought that was just my thought on it. Because I do think it's going to. I think it's going to come down to something like that. He's probably going to be somebody around this track. Always has the very lonely race. I have a funny feeling that might be Max Verstappen.
Very, very good judgment there, then. And for my bonus picks, I'm going to go with Max Verstappen, just missing out on the podium, probably by a decent gap, if we're being honest. But I do think he's going to finish decent and take fourth. Then I've got Carlos Sainz coming in fifth, and Sergio Perez kind of having a Sergio Perez type race in sixth place, although he has won a race here before, I believe. So fingers crossed that I'm wrong on this one.
Yeah, I just realized I didn't have Max anywhere in the top six. Well, I guess I'm going to double down on that one. And I'll say maybe he finishes seventh and championship really back on. Then I'm saying something different.
There you go.
That if these predictions hold, I will bring out what I was going to say at Monza had Lando won in Monza. So let's hope it happens so you can all find out what it was. What brilliant thing I was going to say. Not really. It's not that great, but it is kind of what it is. But anyway, Where and when can you watch your F1 this weekend? ESPN Family of Networks has you covered, as well as F1 TV. If you are in the U.S., looks like ESPN2 has the majority of the sessions. They have everything but the race. So FP1, bright and early, 5:30 a.m. Eastern, that's on ESPN2. FP2, 9 a.m. Eastern, that's on ESPN2. FP3, 5:30 a.m. Eastern again, as the sun is starting to set in Singapore, on ESPN2. The qualifying an hour later than the race itself, 9 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Central. So we get a bit of a break there. That's on ESPN2. But the race itself, not quite as early as last time, but still just as the sun's coming up here, 7 a.m. for me, 8 a.m. Eastern. ESPN main channel is your home for the race on Sunday. All right. Cody, any final thoughts on the Singapore weekend before we hop on out for the night?
I am going to try to soak up the enjoyment from this one as much as possible, because we're going to go on another long break before you get to go see the United States Grand Prix. So I gotta enjoy this one while it lasts before the break. I am also actually thinking I'll be able to get up for this one. I surprised myself and got up to watch Azerbaijan live, and it was kind of nice. Sun's coming up. Out these big windows, all the cats are still kind of snoozing. I get my coffee, so I think I'll be able to make this one live.
Yeah, I mean, a shot of Red Bull would actually be a good thing for you if you wanted to watch this race. So, that's an idea there. I'm privy to the Starbucks Frappuccino. That's the caffeine going into my veins, but I will definitely probably be doing that as well. And I will have all my mission control set up for the race on Sunday, and we will be hopefully back, Sunday night. We'll make sure that the logistics can happen that way. To recap the good, the bad, and who did well, who did poorly from the Singapore Grand Prix. So look out for that. Try to get that out hopefully on Monday as well for all you guys to enjoy the recap of the Singapore Grand Prix weekend. So for Cody, it's been Andy. Let's enjoy our F1 while we have it, because it's going to go away for a little bit, but it will come back strong. And as always, may all your laps be fast.